This podcast is brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International. To find out more, visit blackaby.org.
Welcome to the Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast. It's my pleasure to be with you all, and joining me, as always, is Dr. Richard Blackaby, who helps take our leadership to the next level.
Well, I'm working on some harder than others, Sam.
Yeah.
But it is good to be with you.
Yeah, so, well, let's just jump right into it this week, why don't we? And
no preamble?
Nope,
no chasing rabbits?
No rabbits, no hares, no distractions, no diversions.
I think you're getting distracted.
Oh, as I was saying. Yeah, so this week we're going to dive in and see what's what.
Yeah. And speaking of that, it's I'm going to just
you got to be a little faster,
yeah,
Richard.
I know.
I just lobbed that up
quick.
there.
You're a quick one, Sam.
You know,
I don't care what people say. This I'm actually I sort of need a bit of a disclosure here because
so the preamble then. I'll let you do the preamble.
Yeah, I'll do the preambles around here, Sam.
Yeah, okay.
My associate Rick Fisher and yours, our vice president of our ministry, has a saying that has become very popular for him. He certainly likes it and uses it all the time. He and I travel together all the time. And I don't think we ever go on a trip where at some point he doesn't say this phrase. And so I'm not throwing Rick under the bus. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad phrase, but I would like to exegete it a little bit in this session. Rick's not here to defend himself, so if you want full disclosure, you'll need to talk to him. He's going to have to start his own podcast.
Yeah.
But he
couldn't be reached for comment before publication.
So this is the phrase that he is wont to use, and that is, it is what it is. And so something will go wrong.
So what is it?
We'll travel somewhere to a conference, and when we arrive, we find out that maybe the pastor or the person that was in charge of putting it together has not done as good of a job advertising it as he should. He made some rookie assumptions that proved to be false, and now we're there, but things aren't in place. Promotion's not been what we thought it would be. There's various logistical problems. And so at some point, I know that Rick's going to probably say it is what it is. And I have had this sort of struggle with that phrase in some ways. And I'd like to just talk a little bit about that because I think it kind of surfaces an issue for leaders. When you shrug your shoulders and say it is what it is, I suppose there's a good side to that and a bad side. Paul, in a sense, kind of was on both sides of that. On one side, Paul said this, which sounds a lot like it is what it is. In Philippians 4, verse 11, he says, I have learned to be content in whatever circumstance I'm in, for I know how to make do with little, and I know how to make do with a lot. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being content. And he goes on, whether well-fed or hungry, whether in abundance or in need, I'm able to do all things through him who strengthens me. So that sounds kind of like it is what it is there.
Yeah.
It's like Paul saying, if I've got a lot, I can adjust to that. If I have little, I adjust to that. If I've got plenty to eat, that's fine. If I've got a little to eat, I can handle that too. And I think that there is a certain part of us that needs to kind of embrace that approach, or else the frustrations of leadership are going to drive you crazy.
Yeah. Because
oftentimes people don't respond the way you expected them to. Circumstances don't always turn out the way that they should. Whenever someone asks me about how my favorite hockey team is doing, I tend to have to say,
it is what it is.
Yeah, instead of just saying they lost again, I have to say, well, but their best defenseman was out from COVID, and they didn't have this, and they were jet lagged because their plane got in late the night before. And so instead of just saying it is what it is, they lost, I sort of feel the need to go into all the
To
reasons
explain
why.
the specifics for why this time
Yes,
they
because
lost.
yeah.
Because had that not happened,
That's true. Who only God knows
Yeah.
what could have been the end result. But so sometimes you can just agonize over what if they had just done that, if they had just done this, if the economy had not just tanked right when I was trying to sell my house, and you can get so stressed about that one of I think one of the skills of leaders is you've got to deal with the world that is, not the world you want it to be.
Yeah.
When you lead an organization, you can't try. A lot of times people's frustration is they don't have the church that they want. If they're a pastor, they have a church full of people that don't want to follow, that aren't very spiritual, that aren't excited about being on mission with God. And so a lot of leaders get frustrated because they want their organization to be different than what it actually is.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think it can be healthy to say, well, it is what it is, at least for now. That's what I've got to work with. These are the circumstances that I'm working under. And that really kind of helps you be more stress-free. It's you're not stressing out over what it's supposed to be like or what it could have been like. You just accept this is what it's like. And and I've known some people at times that just obsessed over, well, if only this, if only that. And sometimes it could be really healthy to just ground yourself in, but this is how it is. This is what it's like. And yeah, it would have been nice if the economy was booming right now, that it would have been nice if this law had passed or any number of things, but what is the reality? Let's deal with reality.
Yeah. So would people who prefer that sort of mode of operating, do you think they would consider themselves just realists? Like, I'm not, not caught up in, what could be, but I'm dealing with the facts on the ground. And
yeah, and it's like,
or
let's not waste our time speculating about other worlds that we don't live in. Like, this is the world we're in. This is what it's like. So like, if Rick and I arrive somewhere and the hosts are not nearly as prepared as they should have been, we can get all upset. It can ruin our dinner. We can get all frustrated and have the wrong attitude when we go in to speak to the people the next day. Or we can say, okay, well, the crowd's not as big as we had hoped it would be. Could have been bigger if they had just done these simple things, but all right, well, that's who we've got. So let's give them our best and move on. That's kind of the positive side of that.
Mm-hmm.
But even with Paul, he says something as well in the same book of Philippians, chapter 3, verse 12. He says, "Not that I have already reached the goal or am already perfect, but I make every effort to take hold of it, because I also have been taken hold of by Christ." And he goes on to say, "Forgetting what is behind and reaching forward to what is ahead, I pursue as my goal the prize promised," and so on. So in other words, he's talking about striving. He's saying, I'm not content to stay where I am.
Yeah.
I know that there's more, and so I'm pressing on. I'm reaching forward. And so I also realize that for some people, saying it is what it is can be a cop-out. You've got a manager who's not, his department, his division is not meeting sales goals, but hey, the economy is not great, so it is what it is. We're underperforming, but it is what it is. Quite frankly, as a leader, I don't like people working under me who use that phrase very much. It's like, if you missed the target, you didn't get the work done, don't come to me and just shrug your shoulders and say it is what it is. That's not the answer that I'm looking for from people that work for me. I want results, and I want problems overcome and solved. Don't just think you could tell the boss it is what it is. That's usually not going to go over very well for the boss. I want to hear that you're striving and reaching forward and pressing on and overcoming. Yeah. You may not have arrived there yet, but you're not content to stay where you are. And I've seen pastors that way, that their church has not grown in 10, 15, 20 years but they kind of shrug their shoulders and say, it is what it is. I guess this church is just meant to always be small, or I guess I'm just a small church kind of pastor, so I'm not going to be stressed about it. And those kind of people don't typically struggle from heart disease because they're not overly stressed in their life and their leadership, but they also don't set the world on fire either. And so when Rick comes and reports into me, oh, they didn't advertise like they should have. They should have done this. They should have done that. Before he says it is what it is, I'm going to say, well, Rick, what could we have done to prepare this pastor? Should we have sent him a checklist and told him, okay, on these dates, we're going to check back with you and make sure that you have done this and you've advertised here and you have enlisted these people, and we'll follow up a week out and a month out. And before we just say it is what it is, let's stop and ask ourselves, what could we have done so that it is different right now than what it is? And what do we learn from this? What do we take? I mean, obviously, it may be too late. I have had scenarios like that where I traveled a great distance to go to a meeting and then was disappointed to hear that when I arrived that, these people we thought were going to sponsor this meeting, and then they backed out and they're not sending any of their people, and it's going to be a lot smaller, and we're having to cut costs and so on. And but then I've also known sponsors, instead of just saying it is what it is, they got on the phone and they started calling people and they started sending out emails and they started offering last minute discounts. And they, instead of just saying it is what it is, they took the last few hours and they stepped it up and made every effort. So, I'm always a little, there's this tension there because
there is,
when do you go to that it is what it is? And when do you say, I'm not willing to just accept that yet? There may be more that still could be done.
Well, let's take a quick break here and we'll find out more about what is and what isn't. Richard and Daniel Blackaby will be at the Billy Graham Training Center at The Cove on May 17th through 19th, 2021. The title of this event is On the Move, How God Increases Your Spiritual Influence. You can find out more and register at thecove.org. Links will also be in the show notes. Well, Richard, we've seen what was. We've looked at what is. And now let us look at what is to come. But we've looked at just this attitude that can sometimes creep into any leader, and just sort of the idea that things are the way they are. It is what it is, as Rick likes to say. But that can sometimes lead us down a path of complacency.
Yeah.
That can cause us to really use that as a crutch to not really do our very best. And so I guess my thinking would be there are times when, as you said, that things are what they are. It is what it is. And there really isn't anything else to do but to accept it and move on. But I suspect, as you know, that there are times where it could be something else.
Yeah.
And so maybe just let's break down from the time we have left for the listeners. What are those times what are some principles that we can take away to know, okay, in this instance, let's let it go and we'll try and do better next time. And in other instances, no, actually there's still more work that could be done to improve the situation.
Yeah. And so I think the first thing you want to do is you want to recognize what can be changed and what cannot be changed. If you are at the venue and they didn't advertise it very well and the meeting starts in 15 minutes, you're probably at this point just need to resign yourself. That's your audience. You're not, it's too late to advertise anymore, make last ditch sort of marketing campaigns. So at a certain point, you just realize, okay, this can't be changed. It might have been able to be changed if we had looked at it 2 weeks ago, but at this point now, it's not changeable. This is what we've got to work with. So once you determine now, and so the flip side of that is if something can be changed, you also need to recognize that. Don't go to it is what it is if there's still time to change something, to make something it different. So the first key is it feasible at this point to change? And if it's not, then you may have to resign yourself. This is what I've got. Second is don't waste energy and stress and worry on what is out of your control. There's some things you can't do anything about. It's not up to you. It's not your purview. For instance, if you're working with the church and there's some things that only the pastor can do, and the pastor chose not to do it, you can't do his job. You weren't there in his place, and you wish you could have done his job for him, but you can't. And so just decide, I mean, is this, if this is in my area of responsibility and I just dropped the ball, well then is there still time to change it? But if it's not my responsibility, I can't fret myself on if that guy had only done his job. Now, if my job is to remind that guy to do his job, that's something, but I can't necessarily do his job. So determine, is this something that I could have done anyway? Is this my job? Or is this just, maybe it's an economy thing. You know, if it's like the economy tanked, you're not in charge of the economy. So you can stress about it and kick yourself and keep on thinking over and over again, if only, you know, the economy had been booming then. And, but you're completely out of your control. So don't worry about that, because that is something that you can fret about the rest of your life. It's not going to change it. And then third, just manage well what is within your control. So if there is something that you could do it well. Do it to the best of your ability. And that's really where drive and motivation comes in. And just throughout the course of my life, I've got some friends that are very slow talking, slow moving, easy going kind of guys. I mean, if you just want to chill out, they are great guys to chill out with. If you want to turn around a church or an organization, they're probably not the guys, because they just are not that driven. They're never really in a hurry. They don't get all that excited. It's just easy going kind of people. And so those kind of people tend to gravitate toward it is what it is, because they're okay. They're okay with a small crowd, a small sale, not much change. And you sort of say, well, but that was within your control. You just settled for a lot less than you needed to. And there's a great story actually in 2 Kings chapter 13 where Elisha the prophet has Jehoash the king come to him, and Elisha says, okay, now take these arrows. He's going to make a prophetic kind of decree on the Arameans, who are the enemies of the nation of Israel. And so he tells the king, take these arrows and strike the ground with them. And so the king thinks, okay, strike the ground. So he hits the ground 3 times and he stops. He thinks 3 is a good biblical kind of number, and that maybe is sufficient. And Elisha immediately rebukes him and says, why did you only hit the ground 3 times? Like, why didn't you hit it 5 or 6 times? Because he says every time you struck the ground was going to represented a time that your army was going to defeat the Arameans. And you struck it 3 times, you're going to beat them 3 times. But if you'd struck it 5 or 6 times, that would have been enough defeats to basically knock them right out of commission. And so all you've done is you're going to just give them a setback, but you're not going to destroy them. And so Elisha is saying, look, when you have an opportunity to do something, do it with gusto, do it with enthusiasm. Always go the extra mile, do more than is required, not just the minimal. And basically the king did the minimum, and so he was going to get the minimum results. And so I always tell people, I mean, there's lots of reasons for you to be driven to say, I'm not going to be satisfied with just what is. I am driven to make things better. One of those motivators has to be the glory of God. You've got to realize that your work reflects on God. And so knowing that, why would you ever be half-hearted, lackadaisical about bringing glory to God, to your Creator? Everything you do, you want to do with enthusiasm because it reflects on God. I remember when I first became a pastor, I came into a church that had been had an interim pastor for a while. It was somewhat neglected. Like this church was, you walk into an auditorium that people have been meeting in every week, and you're just kind of struck with how bland it looks. Like there's no flowers, no potted plants. Everything looks old and tired and drab, and it just they've gotten into that attitude. It is what it is. That's the way the auditorium looks. It's looked that way for years. So we don't even think about it. We just walk in and we have our worship service. We go home. But then a new leader comes in and looks around and says, "Yeah, but it could be so much better than that. Why wouldn't we just go get a couple of potted plants and add some greenery onto the platform? Or, why would we leave this dusty old thing that's been sitting here forever? It was unattractive when it was new, and now it's old and dingy. Let's just remove some things. This is big and bulky. Why don't we get something that's more streamlined?" But a lot of times, especially followers, get into this attitude. Well, that's just how it's always been. It is what it is. Why would we change that? And then others look at the same thing and say, but it could be so much better. Why would you leave it that way when it could be better? And a lot of that just comes down to pride or the glory of God, to say, like, I'm serving God here. I reflect on God. So it needs to be the best that I can do. It might not be the best in the world, but certainly the best that I can do. Why would I just give it half my effort and say, there, God, it's good enough, when you could have done more and made it even better? And then secondly, it was glory to God. And then secondly, there's just pride in your work. And I don't know how to instill that in people, to help them actually have pride in what they do. But some people, they just don't really care. They just want to get it done and move on to stuff that they enjoy doing. They don't really enjoy their work. They don't take pride in their work. And yet I would say, but you're investing a lot of your life in your work. So whether you necessarily just love your work or not, if you're going to put that much of your life into something, it ought to be as good as you can do it. I remember years ago, I had a summer job where I was working at a kind of a discount lumber yard, and we sold discounted wood. It was not prime wood lumber. It was, a good deal. And so one of the things we did was we sold a lot of boards that would be used for fences. And because it was cheaper lumber, what that meant was that, if you bought a stack of lumber, you'd probably get a couple of really nice boards in there, and you get a couple of sort of average boards. And there might even just be a bad board in there somewhere, but you sort of paid a really cheap price, and then, you got what you got.
It's a mixed bag.
Probably just buy 10% more than you need and, throw away 10% of the junk, and you got a decent fence. And you're saving so much money that it's worth it. But so someone would come in to buy, they'd say, okay, I need this many boards, I'm building a fence, and my job was to help load it up on their truck or whatever. And some guys would just say, that's fine, just throw those boards on there. They would say, it's just a fence, it's just a fence. Like, it's not like it's a china cabinet. I'm just building a fence. So that's all I need, just some basic boards to get the job done. And then I'd have other people that would be picking through all the boards trying to get just the really good ones. And that you weren't allowed to do that. That was kind of the deal, was you took it as is. And I would say, well, I'm sorry, you can't just pick the top 10% in this whole pile and then leave all the junk. You sort of take it as as is, like that. And they would look at me and say, yeah, but this is for my fence. I would say, well, the guy right before you said it's only a fence, but for you, it's your fence. It's what's going to be circling your property, and you care about it. And I thought, for a lot of people, it's the building, using it for the same purpose. Some people is like, but this reflects on me. This reflects on my property. It needs to be the best it can be. And other people, very same thing. But it's like, who really cares, And so the people that have really excelled as leaders have typically been the ones who took pride in their work. Steve Jobs is a classic example. You buy a new laptop from Apple, and just pulling it out of the package. Like, he would agonize about the layout and how you just packaged up,
Yeah.
the power cord. It's like, it's just a power cord. Just like throw it in the box, like they're just going to open it all up once they get it anyway. But he wanted it to be an experience, even just how you pulled it out of the box. Of course, that made them the most valuable company in the world as a result, because he took pride in his work. And others would say it's just a box. It's just a necessary evil of having to pull things out and plug them in. And so I've never really known for sure how to teach people to care about their work, to motivate them to take pride in their work. You can model it, you can talk about it, but there's some people that are just a little too quick to push the "it is what it is" button and just do the minimum. And then there's others to say, well, that's how it is now, but I think I can improve it. I can make it better. And so for those of you, our listeners today, that tend to get kind of stressed out about stuff beyond your control, then you probably need this phrase. You probably need to just chill out a bit and just accept the fact that you have not been asked to run the world, and you can't just be in charge of making everything as it should be. You need to look within your realm of control and possibilities and do that well. But the stuff that's beyond you, you may have to just realize, okay, that's not I have no control over that. I'm just going to have to accept that and not stress about it. But those things that I could make better, those things that could have been different had I just done a better job, those things I'm going to not just be too quick to just accept how they are. I may have to accept the way they are this time, but I'm going to definitely make changes so next time it isn't the same way. It's better the next time. And so one of the kind of fine details of leadership is having to recognize day after day what is within my control, what is it I should concern myself about and do my very best, and what things do I have to just wash my hands of and say, I wish that guy had more pride in his work, but he doesn't. But that's his concern, not mine.
Well, I think a very practical podcast today, and so I appreciate you taking the time, and until next time.
We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, it really makes a difference if you leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. We always love hearing from our listeners, so email us at podcast@blackaby.org.